Grimm's Fairy Tales. Snow White and Rose Red. Written by Xavier Peretta, illustrated by Celsia Johansson. Check out the link in the description down below to download the app or buy the book. Poor woman had 2 rose trees growing outside her cottage, one with beautiful white flowers and the other with red. She also had twin girls, named after the rose trees, Rose Red and Snow White. Every night the 2 girls would listen to their mother reading a fairy tale. One winter's evening, just as they were finishing their story, there was a loud knock on the door. Rose Red opened it, and an enormous brown bear stuck his snout inside. The 2 girls jumped back, afraid. "I mean no harm," the bear said. "I just want my warm paws by the fire." So the bear was allowed to come in and sit down. The girl's mother went on with the story, and bit by bit the girls came closer to the bear and leaned against his warm fur for comfort. In the morning, the girls let the bear out and he wandered off in the snow. But that evening he returned to hear more stories. And he kept coming back till the spring. Then, one day the bear said, "I shall not return tonight. I must go to the mountains to guard my treasure from the dwarfs. In winter, when the ground is frozen, they cannot dig my gold up. But in spring, when the ground is soft, they steal it." Snow White and Rose Red were sad, for they had grown very fond of the bear. Snow White opened the door, and the bear was soon lost to sight. Not long afterwards, Snow White and Rose Red went to the forest to collect firewood. On the way back, they came across a dwarf, jumping up and down like a grasshopper. His long beard was trapped under a fallen tree trunk. The girls pulled on the beard to set him free, but it was no use. So Snow White whipped out a pair of scissors and snip, snip. She cut off the ends. How can I go without the little tip of my beard missing, you silly?" "Insolent creatures," roared the dwarf. "It is a good job it will grow back quickly." And without so much as thank you, he pulled a bag of gold out of the hollow tree trunk and disappeared into the forest with it. The girls hoped they would never run into that ungrateful dwarf again, but only a week later they met him once more by a brook. As they approached the water, they saw the rude dwarf leaping about.
Help! Help! Help!
My beard just got tangled in the fishing line," snapped the dwarf. "And a big fish is about to pull me into the water. Don't just stand there watching me drown." The girls tried very hard to free the dwarf from the line, but it was no use. So once again, Snow White produced her sewing scissors and snip, snip, she cut off a good portion of the dwarf's beard. "Are you mad?" howled the dwarf the moment he was free. "You have ruined my face completely." And with that, he fished a bag of pearls out from amongst the reeds and disappeared down the road. A week later, the girls were on their way to the market when they saw an eagle wheeling overhead. The large bird landed behind a big rock, and a moment later, the girls heard someone howling. The eagle had snatched up their old friend, the dwarf, by his trousers. "Get over here and help me!" cried the dwarf. "Can't you see? This monster is about to have me for breakfast!" At once, the girl grabbed the dwarf by the coat's tails and started pulling. They pulled and pulled until they had tugged the dwarf right out of the eagle's claws. You clumsy creatures," said the dwarf. "My coat is torn into shreds." Then he prized a bag of diamonds out from under the rock and he was gone. On the way home from the market, the girls bumped into the dwarf a 4th time. He was sitting on the grass with diamonds scattered around him. "What are you whooping about?" shouted the dwarf. Have you never seen diamonds before? Be off with you, you thieves! He was still ragging when a bear leaped out of the trees and pounced on him. The bear raised his enormous paw and thwack! He gave the door a mighty blow and sent him flying. The girls screamed and started running, but the bear called after them, "Snow White, Rose Red, wait for me!" The girls recognized their old friend and stopped. As the bear caught up with them, his claws disappeared. His fur melted away, and there stood a handsome prince. "I am the king's son," he said. "That wicked dwarf stole my treasure and put a spell on me to live as a bear until the dwarf has been punished. Now I am free to go home." Soon Snow White married the prince and Rose Red married his twin brother. The girl's mother came to live with them in the palace, and she brought her 2 rose trees with her. Every year they continued to bear the most beautiful blooms. Snow White and Rose Red.